Ulanin na kayo.
Okay, good afternoon everyone, or in Hiligaynon, maayong hapon sa tanan. I would like to remind our participants that the virtual conference will start shortly. Just to remind again our participants who are new to this session that we have rules that you are expected to follow throughout the whole duration of this conference. 1, the opening of camera is recommended. 2, always mute your microphone. 3, use headphones or earphones. 4, find a seat or location that is comfortable and well lighted. 5, it is advised to wear business or smart casual attire. 6, finish the whole virtual conference and complete the evaluation form for you to get your certificate. 7, always direct your concern through personally message or PM on our page or our email address so we can provide answer to your concern. We are still viewed on different social media platforms. We are presently live here in Zoom and in YouTube at the official channel of POMMI. We also have a delayed telecast in Facebook at the official Facebook page of PAISI 21. Again, I am Mr. Jose Abrian Di Casella, a social science faculty member of Iloilo Science and Technology University, the vice president of PAISI 21, and is the moderator for this event. Welcome to the second part of the day 1 of our national virtual conference for research with a theme, Retooling Research Skills for Professional Credibility and Integrity in the Academe. This morning, we were able to listen and absorb a great discussion from Dr. Gilbert C. Magulo Jr. on a topic, Conducting Methodology Review for Qualitative Research Design. Dr. Magulod is the University Director for Knowledge Management of Cagayan State University. From one great discussion, we will now proceed into another session. This one is equally interesting and very relevant for us educators who wanted to venture and become great researchers. For the second part of this conference, we will have a topic on using joint display analysis in mixed method research, or MMR. Just this morning, we have those who were already, or we have one who was able to throw already a question about mixed method research. And again, I am telling you, the speaker that we have or that we are about to introduce to you is the best person that can provide answer to that question. So, before we formally introduce to you our speaker, let me remind you again that you are expected to effectively and responsibly use in raising your questions. You can write your questions or insights while our speaker is having his discussion, but expect it to be answered during the question and answer portion. We will be having the open forum after the speaker's presentation. So to those who would like to personally ask questions, you may also press the raise hand button and we will be notifying you ahead if you are recognized. Thank you. Let us proceed now to the introduction of our resource speaker. Our speaker for this afternoon is a multi-award winning Filipino master teacher, speaker, and researcher from Pampanga, Philippines. He is a senior high school master teacher at San Matias National High School, School Division Office of Pampanga, Region 3 of the Department of Education, with over 2 decades of teaching experience. He is a Dangal ng Bayan award-winning educator, The Dangal ng Bayan Award from the Philippine government is conferred to an individual for performance of the extraordinary act or public service and consistent demonstration of exemplary ethical behavior on the basis of adherence to the code of conduct and ethical standards for public officials and employees. He is also the recipient of Asian Achiever Award in 2019, Gawad Pat National Award in 2019, Outstanding Research Advocate of the Philippines Award in 2019, and Most Outstanding Teacher Award in 2018. As a research advocate, it has been his advocacy to promote the culture of research by developing school-based research management in the region. He has initiated research capacity building for new researchers in the government and private schools. His network with other international organizations became a bridge in hosting international research conferences in Singapore, Bangkok, Philippines, and Vietnam. His love for less fortunate moved him to conduct studies and advocacies for community development in the depressed areas and initiated literary and faith program to select children of Macabebe, Pampanga, Philippines. As an educational leader, he has written contextualized curriculum modules for values education for junior high school and written assessment and evaluation tool for the senior high school in the Department of Education. Our speaker holds a bachelor's degree in education, BS Ed major in religious education, and master in religious studies, major in catechetics, cum laude in Don Bosco Center of Studies, Parañaque City, an affiliate of Salesian Pontifical University, Rome, Italy. He took a Master of Arts in Education, bridge course in De La Salle University, Das Marinas. He received 2 honorary doctorate in philosophy institution in Brazil. He is preparing for his final defense on emerging model on promoting and enhancing research productivity in basic education for his Doctor of Philosophy in Educational Management at the University of the Assumption, San Fernando, Pampanga. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Mr. Leonilo Basas Capulso, LPT, MRS, MAED, SMR, IEDR, PhDC, PhD, HC. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for that very generous introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear, sir.
So once again, thank you for that generous introduction. A permission to share screen, sir. Okay. So is my screen visible?
Yes, sir. We can see it now.
So thank you once again, Sir Jose Abrian Casella, and to Philippine Institute of 21st Century Educators Incorporated for hosting this national virtual conference for research. Dr. Gilbert actually was a good friend of mine. He'd been my co-author in several books on research. And with Dr. Cyril, we've been together for quite some time virtually also. So for this afternoon, I am tasked to share my insights on joint display analysis in mixed method research. For our key ideas of what will transpire this afternoon, and if time allows, we will try to define mixed method research very briefly. We will know when to use mixed method designs, the development of mixed method research, types of mixed methods designs, key characteristics of mixed method research, steps in conducting mixed method research study, evaluating a mixed method study, the concept and procedure in conducting joint display analysis in mixed method, the different variations of joint display analysis, and towards the last part, I'll be sharing to you my dissertation, which I just finally defended in the from the University of the Assumption using joint display analysis, and that's basically where I am coming from. To start with, one of the renowned person in research, particularly in mixed method, is no other than Creswell, who once defined mixed method as a procedure for collecting, analyzing, and mixing, take note of that, both quantitative and qualitative data in a single study in order to understand a research problem. So our keyword there is mixing. He further said that the purpose of mixed method research, or MMR, is both quantitative and qualitative research in combination provide a much better understanding of a research problem or issue than either research approach alone. For those in the basic education, particularly in the Department of Education, when we are asked to conduct our research, action research, or applied research, we either do it using experimental method, if it is action research, using quantitative method. But recently, our speaker from Ateneo de Manila University, on the other hand, would emphasize the importance of using qualitative research in doing action research. However, here this afternoon, we're trying to venture more on the combination of both methodology. Okay. Okay, let me proceed. According to Abowitz and Toll, using multiple methods to study the same problem is what mixed method research is doing. Okay, it can detect recurrent patterns or consistent relationship among variables, results that are independent of one particular data source or type of measurement and its inherent weaknesses. But the question is, when do we need to use mixed method research? Why not only use, for example, quantitative or qualitative research? When both quantitative and qualitative data are used together, okay, it provides a better understanding of your research problem than either type by itself. Particularly now during this pandemic, we are confronted with different data as to students' engagement, competencies, and if we only merely base our grades on how students engage and how students perform, there is a higher chances that students will fail if we have to be strict with our rubrics of giving them grades. However, if we try to go deeper and understand why students weren't able to engage, were not able to participate, then we are given a much deeper perspective and understanding of our students, and much more if we try to combine these two data. Okay, so in order to provide a complete picture of the research problem, okay, on quantitative part, when it gives us trends and describing population, how many of our students are failing, how many of our parents are not participating, how many of our LGUs are very active in engaging. Quantitative side, it gives us the participants' words, their narratives, their sentiments, their challenges, and their experiences. When do you want to build from one phase of a study to another? Okay, so you use method research. It enables us to explore qualitatively, then develop an instrument. Okay, for those people, for example, who started their masters using a qualitative study. Okay, they use qualitative research in their masters, and out of the themes, they were able to create instrument to be used for a further study. Or it could be a follow-up of a quantitative study to obtain a more detailed information, just like what I have told you, that if we want to know on the percentage of students' participation and engagement, we use quantitative. But if you want to go deeper as to the reason, for example, why the students are failing, then we use the mixed method research. Okay. How did mixed method research develop? So it is a mixing of forms of quantitative data. So Campbell and Fisk's of multi-trait, multi-method approach, developing multiple psychological traits using multiple methods. So this is how it all started according to Creswell. Expanding into triangulation of quantitative and qualitative data. So take note of the word triangulation. Triangulation can be used in many different words. There could be a triangulation of method when you use more than one research method in order to understand a particular phenomenon or a particular variable. Okay. Then later on, there was a debating on the integration of the worldview to the methods. Okay. particularly on the philosophical and psychological underpinnings of a particular variable, then developing procedures for designs, and advocating for a distinct design, particularly mixed method research design. Now, how do we identify a mixed method study in the literature? The title of the word such as mixed method or multi-method is actually our keyword in identifying mixed method study in all the literature we are studying. Okay, data collection section indicates both qualitative and quantitative data were collected. So if you try to go to, for example, into the method section, or sometimes even in the abstract part, you will see that the data were collected using quantitative and qualitative instruments. So that means to say that you are holding a mixed method study. Also, the purpose statement of your paper or research questions indicate that the researcher intends to collect quantitative and qualitative data during the study. So these are your clue and your cue that the literature you are holding or you are reading are actually venturing into mixed method study. Now, priority or weight in the mixed method research, you try to determine which is given a priority. Is it giving priority on qualitative method? Is it giving a priority to quantitative method, or is it giving equal priority to both methods? Okay, sequence of collecting quantitative and qualitative data is also indicated. That will determine later on what kind of mixed method we are actually using or will be adapting on the kind of sequencing from quantitative or qualitative method or data gathering. Don't be confused. Sometimes we use Q&R to give a shortcut for our quantitative research and QLR for our qualitative research, or sometimes we say quan for quantitative and qual for qualitative. Okay, analyze both data sets. So combining combined in one analysis or integration. Later on, we will discuss more about integration, or doing in a separate analysis. So you're doing a quantitative analysis at the same time you are doing a qualitative analysis. Now, look at this. Annotation system for designs according to Criswell. Okay. In study 1, you have qualitative, the qual plus quan. Take note of the capital letter and the small letter. Okay. The uppercase letters indicate a priority or increase in weight for either quantitative and qualitative data. So in this study on qualitative, look at or capital letters, then quantitative, again, capital letters. This means to say that in this study, both qualitative and quantitative methods are equally given importance. So this indicates the simultaneous or concurrent collection of quantitative and qualitative data. And take note, my dear audience, my dear participants, that this is the kind of study I will for research in my dissertation, because I used a concurrent triangulation mixed method in trying to integrate my data using joint display analysis. On the second study, however, you see there quantitative method in a capital letter and qualitative method in a small letter. This shows that the sequential collection of quantitative and qualitative data. So if you're starting from quantitative going to qualitative, you are actually looking at a sequential collection of quantitative and qualitative data, starting from quantitative going to qualitative. As mentioned, lowercase letters indicate a lower priority or weight for either quantitative or qualitative data. So in the second data, you know that the main focus or the ones given an emphasis is the quantitative method rather than qualitative method. Now, let's try to look at very quickly the different kinds of mixed method research. One, the explanatory mixed method design. Okay, in explanatory mixed method research design, researcher places priority on quantitative data collection and analysis. That is why our quan here is capital letters. Okay, that means to say if you're going to use explanatory mixed method, you start with quantitative data. Okay, researchers therefore collects quantitative data first in the sequence. So you start using your instrument, your survey, or what other quantitative instrument available based on your study. Then researcher uses the qualitative data to refine the results of the quantitative data. For example, if you realize that your quantitative result is a bit harsh, is a bit not so um, acceptable because of a negative effect, if you want to have a better understanding why it has leaning towards the negative side, then you can use explanatory, or you can use the qualitative method in trying to compensate and to understand your quantitative data. Now, the triangulation design. In triangulation mixed method, the researcher gives priority to both quantitative and qualitative data. Look at the quan and the qual, or Q and R and the QLR. Again, this is the kind of design that I used in my dissertation. That is why I'm a little bit familiar with using the mixed method concurrent triangulation. So the researcher collects both quantitative and qualitative data simultaneously. So while you are gathering data, qualitative data, you are also gathering the other data, so that you are gathering data simultaneously. So the researcher therefore compares the results from quantitative and qualitative analysis in order to determine if the two databases yielded similar or dissimilar results. As we try to discuss later on the joint display analysis, it also have some significance. And the other one is the opposite of explanatory, which is the exploratory. In the exploratory research design, the emphasis is on the qualitative study or the qualitative method. So the research emphasizes qualitative data rather than the quantitative data. In other words, the researcher started collecting qualitative data using qualitative methodology. Okay, the researcher has a sequence to collect data that involves collecting qualitative data, then followed by quantitative data. So the researcher plans on a quantitative data in order to build or explain the initial qualitative findings. For example, if you want to understand certain behavior in your classroom with a minimal number, and then you were able to gather themes and categories as part of your findings, then you can actually explore that by developing an instrument using qualitative data collection. Now, in summary, this is what Creswell is giving us. Okay, so the types of mixed method research design. Number one is the triangulation mixed method design. This is sometimes called the concurrent triangulation. Okay, so you have here from the left side, if you're looking at the screen, on the left side you have quantitative data and results. On the right side you have qualitative data and results. The interpretation happens at the middle. Okay, and that's what you actually do during joint display analysis. You're using pillar building. On the explanatory mixed method design, you have your quantitative data and results, and after you have your quantitative data, you follow up using qualitative data collection and eventually results. On the exploratory mixed method, however, you start with qualitative data and results and building from that in order to have quantitative data and results. Okay? Mr. Moderator, can I proceed? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank
We
you.
can follow you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay, now, what are the key characteristics of mixed method design? Because this will determine if our joint display analysis is applicable in our mixed method design. Okay, in a mixed method design, some of the key characteristics are the following: the rationale of your design. So that the researcher must be able to determine and to justify why he or she used mixed method design and not quantitative or qualitative alone. During the dissertation defense, one of the possible question would be this: no, how would the participant, or how would the applicant for PhD decided to choose mixed method design rather than focusing only on one particular design? Collecting quantitative and quantitative data. So your main purpose is to collect both data. The priority, okay, your main priority is not only getting one side of the coin, but basically you would like to take the both sides of the coin so that you will have a more holistic perspective of a particular phenomenon. It is also particular in mixed method design, the sequence that you are using, because the sequence that you are using from mix or from quantitative to qualitative method would determine what kind of research you are using. So the data analysis also should match to the design. Okay, there are different ways of analyzing data, but for this afternoon, we will focus only on using joint display analysis. The diagram of the procedure. I will be showing to you how did I come up with mine later on. So again, on the rationale, the test findings of the first phase, because I said you start either by quantitative or by the qualitative, and then you try to expound it or explore that using the other methodology. Explain in more detailed results of the first phase. You have you decided to follow up with your study, why you need the other side of the data. Provide a more complete understanding than either quantitative or qualitative alone. Now, if you try to listen and watch television every day, you will see both sides trying to find faults to one another or trying to present their own political agenda. And there's always something that people could say positively and negatively. But as voters, as listeners, as Filipinos, we must be able to look at the bigger perspective. What led the person to becoming like that? Why is this person admired despite of his limitation? Or why the person is despite of his being so quiet, is admired because of his being civil, because of his statesmanship, so on and so forth. So in collecting both quantitative and qualitative data, we are using both numeric data and text data or narrative data. When the new survey came out lately about who is the possible contender for a national position, somebody right away said, oh, that is the name survey company has the word Asia. So you know exactly what I mean. They said, how many participants asked? How valid was the results? How samples were chosen? And is that the real sentiments of the people? So if you want to understand using mixed method research is, I think, shall I say, most comprehensive one. But of course, uunahan ko na kayo, hindi ito yung pinakamadali. Okay? So again, another key characteristic of mixed method is that it focuses on priority. Number one, if is the priority giving equal weight to both methodology, then it's concurrent. Or quantitative carries more weight than qualitative, or qualitative carries more weight than quantitative. So it would tell us if we are employing exploratory or explanatory mixed method research design. So as to the sequence, you can actually collect both quantitative and qualitative data at the same time. That's on the sequence, and that is concurrent mixed method. Collecting quantitative first, followed by qualitative, or the other way around. Okay? So those will help us determine the characteristic of the mixed method we are using. As to the analysis matched to the design. So data analysis strategies for triangulation design. There is the different strategy on how are we supposed to triangulate, to analyze data using this. Data analysis strategy for exploratory, data analysis strategy for explanatory. There's a lot of literature that will explain that, but as I mentioned, I will not focus so much on that for today. Diagram of the procedure. So the use of the notation system, the one I presented to you, the diagram, the identify priority, identify the sequence. So that will also lead your readers as to the kind of mixed method you are following. So what are the steps in conducting a mixed method, and where should joint display analysis fit in? So according to Criswell in the paper, Educational Research, we start with determining if a mixed method study is feasible. So we try first to determine, is this study, is the title, is the topic you have chosen possible or feasible to use mixed method research design. That is why from the start, your objective or your problem would be your guide in determining if mixed method actually is applicable in your study. The second step is, sorry for that, identify the rationale for a mixed method study. Why am I using this? Okay. The third step, nauna na siya, identify the data collection strategy and type of design. I said, which priority are we given? Are we given equal priority? Are we given priority to quanti or to quali? Which should start first? Are they going to do simultaneously? Are we starting with quanti or are we starting with quali? As to the visualization at to the diagram, we just follow the presentation earlier, depending on the kind of strategy we are using. The fourth step is develop quantitative and qualitative research question, of course, because we are going to gather both quantitative data and qualitative data. Our instruments, our question guides or guide questions should be also relevant to the kind of data we want to gather, which is actually determined by our research questions. And the fifth is collect quantitative and qualitative data on the sequence depending on what you have chosen. If you have chosen, for example, concurrent triangulation, then the collection of data happens simultaneously. Otherwise, you choose either it is exploratory or explanatory. Okay, and step number 6, analyze data separately or concurrently. So if you're using, for example, explanatory or exploratory, you have to analyze the data separately. You could start with quanti, you could start with quali. Whereas if you're using concurrent triangulation, you analyze them together. Okay? And of course, on the 7th step, you write the report as 1 to 2 phase study. Okay? Asan papasok ang joint display analysis? Si joint display analysis ay papasok siya pagdating na dito sa analyzing of data. Okay? So, dito siya papasok sa ating step number 6. Then, how do we evaluate a mixed method study? Okay. On the mixed method study, we try to evaluate by asking the following question. Number 1, does the study employ at least one quantitative method and one qualitative method? If your answer is yes, then you are using mixed method study. Second, is it called a mixed method or a similar term study? Third, is there a rationale for why the author intends to mix the method in a single study, and what will be the gain in the process? Okay, because sometimes there are authors who decided to do separate studies. So they first conduct a quantitative study as a one full study. And after that, they decided to do another study, quantitative study, in a separate study. Whereas others, like this study, decided to to conduct the mixed method study altogether. Kaya nga sinasabi ko, yung mixed method ay ginagamit to ng mga taong galit sa research, galit sa numbers, galit sa narrative. Bakit? You are basically conducting three research together. You are doing quantitative research, you are doing qualitative research, and you are integrating two research methodology. Another question could be, does the author indicate the type of mixed method study being presented? Did the author mention, is it an explanatory method? It is an exploratory method, or is it concurrent method? Okay, alternatively, can you identify the type of reading, the rationally or from the visual figure depicting the flow of data collection activities from the onset? Kaya mo na sabihin kaagad kung anong klase ng kanyang data collection, kung anong klase ng mixed method yung gagamitin niya by just looking at the design. Okay. Does the author mention the priority given to quantitative and qualitative data and the sequence of their use in the study? Is the study feasible? Posible ba siya? Given the data to be collected and the amount of money, time, and expertise required. I said it's very challenging to conduct the mixed method study, particularly during the pandemic. When I was finishing my dissertation, I have a hard time collecting data because all this data could be collected or should be collected online and virtually. And as I mentioned, I am going to collect, and I collected both quantitative and qualitative data. Now, next, have the research question been written for both quantitative and qualitative method in the study? If you try to go to the statement of the problem, which of the problems were stated quantitatively and which problems were stated qualitatively? Have the quantitative and qualitative data collection procedures been clearly identified? How would the author collect data in quantitative method? How would the author collect data in quantitative method, or the other way around? Are the procedures for data analysis consistent with the type of mixed method study being presented? So mamaya ipapakita ko sa inyo yung actual na ginawa ko nung ginagawa ko yung aking dissertation, and all these things babalikan natin. Is the written structure of the study consistent with the type of mixed study being presented? Okay, so now we are done with the first part. Okay, we are done discussing about mixed method, what are the underpinnings of mixed method, the kinds of mixed method, steps of mixed method. Now, for the second part of our presentation, we will be discussing and together in understanding joint display analysis as a way of analyzing mixed method data in a mixed method research. Bustamante defined a joint display analysis as a figure or a table where both quantitative and qualitative data are presented. So it's more of a presentation. That's why it's called display. Okay, it's a display of analysis of both quantitative and qualitative data. Peterson and Durante and Jonas, okay, defined GPA or GDA as presentation of qual and quan data in order to illustrate the integrated findings and meta inferences. Later on, you would realize, particularly the one presented by Fitters and Criswell, that in presenting their joint display analysis, they have provided already a particular column for meta-analysis. As for others, they decided to have it discussed towards the latter part, only presenting the joint display. Okay, basically, defined GDA as the efficient way of comparison of two different data sets. Okay, the quantitative data set and the qualitative data set. Gatterman, Fitters, I'll take note that when it comes to joint display analysis, one of the significant persons is Gatterman, Fitters, and Creswell. In 2015, said that there's a predominant statistic by theme side-by-side comparison. So among the joint display analysis kinds being used, the most common use, predominantly joint display use, is the statistics by themes. Okay, statistics on the quantity side, themes to the qualitative side, side-by-side display. Connected results to the theory building. Okay, the main purpose of joint display analysis is for the researcher to create a theory or a framework And I will show also the framework that I was able to gather and to create out of my dissertation. Integration via merging of themes of data, an approach at the method level because we're talking about data collection on the quantity and the quality level follows when two databases are brought together for analysis and comparison. Take note that in analyzing your joint display, Fitters and Gatterman would encourage actually researchers like us to be more creative in presenting our data. Although there were some examples that I actually got pictures from the original presentation of the authors just to present to you how it was actually made. Okay, because there are very minimal figures and images about how this is Peters et al. Said that at the integration and reporting level, when you try to integrate and report, there are three possible approaches on how you integrate quantitative and qualitative data. The first is when you integrate through a narrative. That means to say the description of quantitative and qualitative research using a narrative in a report form, di ba? Kapag tayo ay gumagawa ng mixed method, sometimes we just try to describe how we integrate our quantity and quality using our narrative. So particularly those who are good in language construction, in grammar, okay, language experts would rather use integration through narrative as their way of presenting and reporting their integration of two data. Others would use integration through data transformation, meaning the conversion of qualitative data into a quantitative data or the other way around. So quantitative data is converted into a qualitative data followed by an integration with the other set of data. So you are converting, for example, if you want to convert your qualitative into quantitative, you just try to count how many times this theme was mentioned, how many times this word was mentioned in the manuscript. Okay, so you are now trying to put numbers, trying to equate with quantitative data. That is what it means by data transformation. For us, the ones that I am tasked to share with you is how we integrate our data using a joint display. Okay, Gatterman, Creswell et al. Said that there are 4 variations in doing joint display. So you can display your analysis using comparing results display. This presents convergent and divergent results side by side, okay? And it might be useful to bring attention to multiple perspective or present evidence on test validation. Meaning, if, for example, the results of your quantitative and qualitative research are opposing, you could also present that so that it will be easier for your readers to realize that your participants, particularly if you have different participants and respondents in your quantity and quality, could see how these two participants of your study were actually giving a separate perspective on a particular phenomenon. Kung paano magkaiba yung kanilang pananaw sa isang issue. Halimbawa, pag tinanong mo ngayon, how would you rate the government? Okay? The performance of the government, pag tinanong mo yung mga tao na nagtatrabaho sa gobyerno, malamang iba yung kanilang perspective. Pag tinanong mo naman itong mga taong nagtatrabaho sa simbahan o kaya naman hindi masyado pabor sa ginagawa ng Estado. So, when you try to present these two opposing views and results, you do that by comparing results display, okay? By presenting convergent and divergent results. Side-by-side variation is presenting combination of quantitative and qualitative results thoroughly, okay? It may focus on research questions, results, themes, or theoretical framework. It is more detailed presentation when you try to present how their questions differ or are synonymous with one another. Okay, how it complement one another, the themes and the theoretical framework. Another one is by statistics by themes. Okay, my study is leaning towards this. No, uses a matrix to present qualitative results in one dimension. Okay, and as one dimension and quantitative result as the other dimension. So you are trying to array quantitative categorical data by qualitative theme. So as much as you have your quantitative data, you still are able to create some categories by looking at the mean and trying to create a word to categorize that mean, which will equate later on to the themes which were drawn from your transcript, from your codes. And another way is geocoding by themes display. So combination of visual image. I'll be showing you an example, but we will not elaborate that later on because it's a bit complicated. But for you who are interested in approaching that, you try to study the work of Gatterman and Creswell and Fitters. So visual image of quantitative data in a form of geographical location or references or even pictures, and qualitative results in the form of text from interview or observation or images. Okay, so that's it. Next, as after you are able to integrate your data, you try to look into the coherence of the quantitative and qualitative results that would lead to three possibilities. Ibig sabihin, kapag natapos mo na yung pag-gather mo ng quantitative data at pag-gather mo ng qualitative data, and after you have analyzed them separately, the possible integration could lead to confirmation. One, confirmation is when the results of your database in quanti and quali confirms to one another and have greater credibility. Therefore, it means that your paper has a greater credibility. Okay. Another possible integration or fit that could happen is expansion. So what is expansion? Expansion happens when the results from your quanti and quali diverge, and therefore you need to expand understanding the phenomenon. Okay, ibig sabihin hindi magkatugma, no? Ibig sabihin yung isa going to the right, yung isa going to the left. So that means to say you have to expand your understanding to understand deeper. That's why it's called expansion. Discordance, however, if the results from both databases or database are inconsistent or contradict with each other, okay, needs to gather as a researcher. Therefore, you need to gather additional data. Maybe the data that you have is not enough, does not suffice for you to generalize if it is quanti, or for you to thematize if it is quali. Seeking explanation from theory or challenging the validity of the construct. Now, here we go. Here is an example, okay, of joint display analysis. This is by Ligoki et al. Its study is entitled Clinical Trialist Perspective on the Ethics of Adapted Clinical Trials, a Mixed Method Analysis. So kung titingnan ninyo, the one here, okay, the qualitative findings presented in the box plots. So the one in the box plots, yung green, yung parang brown-yellow, yung purple, and yung blue, these are actually attitudinal findings, quantitative findings, which are presented in a box plot. The color coding by the group across quantitative and qualitative data. So just to determine, for example, bakit may color, for example, itong plot box ng green, which is actually your quantitative result, corresponds to your qualitative data here in green. Okay? So, allow me to wear my glasses. I hope you could read. Let me read you, for example, the one in green. It says here in the, remember that your narrative is your qualitative findings presented as codes. So codes are actually codes taken from your transcripts. Okay? So it says when consultant biostatistician, when done well, they treat patient in and out of the trial better. This is based from the survey on the participants understanding the complexity of an act sufficiently to give informed consent, so on and so forth. So you see how your quantitative data in plot box plots were actually displayed alongside with your qualitative findings in quotes. And on the third line here, you have here the meta inferences, the one that we mentioned. These are the interpretation of the researcher as to the relevance, the relationship between the quantity and the quality data. If you are doing, for example, grounded theory is asking actually, or is encouraging researchers to make their own memos. Memos are your own understanding of the phenomenon as you experience. So this is the meta inferences are actually the interpretation, the thoughts of the researcher of the display. Okay, so if you could see here, the one in brown, it has an arrow leading to this blue box which says indication of source of qualitative data. It just would tell you, kung mapapansin nyo sa dulo, may nakalagay na itong data na to is actually was taken from a mini focus group discussion, just like here. That's why it's indicated here. On the other side, this one naman, this blue says indication of source, survey, or many focus discussion. So this part was taken from the survey. So this is one example of joint display analysis. And your integration, okay, your analysis actually is here in this part, the meta analysis interpretation of the author. He says consultants, biostatisticians, and academic biostatisticians, two research team constituencies that needed to collaborate closely, had seemingly similar qualitative responses. So that is how you interpret now. Okay. Another example of joint display, which is very artistically done, no, by Bustamante, as mentioned earlier, is the circular joint display analysis. And here, if you can see, you have here the three interlapping circles, and then you have here the first interior circle in black. Mapapansin nyo mayroon diyang mga shaded part. Okay, may mga shaded yan. Later on, you would realize anong ibig sabihin niya ng shaded. And then, mayroon kang second layer na circle, may third layer na circle, at mayroon dyan ulit na shaded. Anong ibig sabihin yan? At ang sa dulo, kung napapansin nyo, the outer part actually would say, sige nga kung naalala nyo, what are they? Confirmation, expansion, concordance, conference. This explains the fit, okay? That means to say the data gathered in this area. Ayan. So theory-driven from mixed method case study. So this is actually the display of a mixed method study. The core illustrate theory linked to survey scales with statistical significance. This is using the TPAC model or the TPAC theory. Okay. Technology, pedagogy, and knowledge. Theory of teachers of Spanish. The first white rings has qualitative themes. Ayan. Quali. The second white rings has illustrative quotes. Mapapansin nyo, these are actually quotes. The outside ring has a fit, this one. Okay. That would determine if your data, quantity and quality data, is what kind of fit they belong. To the other side, nandito yung legend. So it says here, yung black, pure black, is taken from a survey, not significant. Kapag may shade, ibig sabihin the result is not significant. Kapag ang white naman ay shaded, it says the findings are negative. At itong gray ay yung integration fit. May tanong lang yung actually for those who are using a colored, lalong-lalo na dito kanina sa ating box plots, the challenge with this is that some of the journals normally do not provide colored font and colored figures like this. And it takes a little bit higher amount if you want the journal to be published in colored. That is why they said that's one of the possible challenge of joint display analysis. Here, another one. Another one is the photo joint display illustrating dependence on coffee. Ayan. Naalala nyo kanina yung sinabi natin. So, here you have the photo number 1, shade grown, 2.71, so on and so forth. These are indicators of this coffee. And then here, corresponding codes. Okay. So for example, if we try to look at this photo number 1, the qualitative code says well cultivated and good quality, good production, clean, good coffee, no disease. That is how it was described. In the meta-analysis, it says place dependency. Coffee demonstrates highest level of importance among participants compared with other landscapes. Perceived attachment based on primary economic and environmental factors, so on and so forth. So here, the researcher again tried to integrate, okay, to analyze the quantity and the quality. So using the figures and the codes. Again, Creswell and Peters actually said that this is not supposed to be published yet, but we could actually share because this was shared originally in their YouTube channel. One of the important things that we have to remember when we are doing GDA is that GDA is iterative process. Ibig sabihin, hindi to isahan, hindi to mabilisan. Paulit-ulit natin tong gagawin. As you will see later on, how did I do it? Kung gaano kagulo na paulit-ulit natin kino-construct yung ating GDA. So you start with identifying first the themes and patterns and anomalies in the results based on the findings of both data sets. Kaya nga sabi natin, di ba, mayroong discordance because there is a possibility that the result of your quantity and quality data will not complement to one another. Then after that, after identify your themes and patterns, decide on the most suitable numeric and text data to integrate. So may themes na ako, pupunta na ako ngayon sa aking quantity data. Asan ba dun sa aking mga quantity data is suitable for my quality data? Okay? That I will build in my display. Then compare and contrast quantitative and qualitative case study data. Okay, so joint display analysis is rarely a one-time process where quantitative and qualitative data are seamlessly integrated with the first attempt. Sa madaling salita, hindi mo kaagad-agad magawa yung iyong joint display analysis in one setting. Okay, you really have to go back to it from time to time, just like every time you do your thematic analysis. Okay, you try to compare codes to codes, codes to categories, codes to themes. And then at a certain point, sometimes if you discover something new, you could even discard everything and start anew. Okay? And because everything is developmental, that is why in writing our research paper, we are always saying this is my working title because sometimes because of the development of our study, we also need to change the title that will best fit to the development of our study. There are 7 core steps on mixed method data analysis leading to joint display analysis. So according to Peters, in his book, The Mixed Method Research Workbook, you first enter data, clean, and database. This is from the start, no? How after you gather your data, how do you do analysis? So you enter your data, clean the database for both quantity and quality. Frame the analysis according to the study purpose. How are you supposed to analyze? Is this did you apply or did you adopt exploratory or explanatory or concurrent? Conduct a preliminary analysis based on your quantity data. What is your analysis? Based on your quality data, what is your analysis? And then you can put them together. Use organizational structure to summarize initial findings. Here you can actually, here at this part, you can already use your joint display. Check for inconsistencies. You check for your fit. Organize findings for dissemination as we mentioned earlier that mixed method and joint display is leading towards theory building or framework building. Interpret the findings and write up results and present your results in a conference or a journal just like this. Okay, so that's exactly what we do in our international journal of advanced multidisciplinary studies. Now, at this point in time, allow me to share my dissertation, and I will show it to you very briefly on how did I apply the concurrent triangulation using joint display analysis. Okay, my paper is entitled An Emerging Model in Promoting and Enhancing Research Productivity in Basic Education. So my topic more on research productivity, and the end product is to create an emerging model, the quality assurance framework. As mentioned, the main purpose of joint display or mixed method could be an emerging model, a framework. So just for you to know how did I go through, I have this overarching objective, which is to develop a quality assurance framework, the QA framework, on promoting research productivity in basic education, drawing from triangulating self-assessment of teachers. This is my quanti. No, they have to assess themselves using my indicators, my 4 research productivity indicators, and the productive teacher research interview results. So napapansin nyo, dalawa yung aking data na ginather, yung kanilang research productivity experiences. So yung mga experiences ng mga productive researchers, at yung analysis, self-analysis, self-evaluation ng mga respondents ko. So particularly, ito yung ating hinanap. So for the quantity data, sabi natin, ano yung tanong natin quantitatively? For quantitative data, I want my respondents to describe their self-assessment on research productivity in terms of individual characteristics, institutional characteristics, leadership characteristics, and self-efficacy. Thank you. Ibig sabihin, these are the indicators, these are the variables that I ask my participants or my respondents to evaluate themselves using a Google form, an online questionnaire. Next, second, determine the significant predictors of research productivity through regression analysis. So question 1 and 2 are actually using a quantitative data collection method. For my first question, I used the simple descriptive statistics, while for the second question, I use inferential statistic, particularly multinomial regression analysis. And of course, the third is describe the experiences and practices of distinguished teachers in pursuit of becoming productive researchers. This is my quali question. So, sabi ko, ito ay concurrent, sabay-sabay ko itong ginagawa. So, the method that I used was concurrent triangulation mixed method. Going back to our discussion, you use concurrent triangulation when the researcher simultaneously collect data quantitatively and qualitatively. At ito yung sinabi kong framework na aking gagamitin. So remember this, quantitative and qualitative data collection. Dito, nagde-data collection, you will have your quantitative analysis, you will have your qualitative analysis separately, but do it simultaneously, and you will have your data results compared. As to my research paradigm, okay? So emerging model framework promoting enhanced research productivity among research and basic education. So here, while I'm doing my my self-assessment, research productivity of teachers, and my regression analysis, I'm also doing my interview. Okay? And then, binangga ko sila so that I will have the emerging themes and theories in capacitating and empowering teachers to become productive research using my triangulation. And then I tried to present the result using the joint display analysis. So I will not elaborate this too much, just to give you some insights kung paano ko siya ginawa. I have 475 participants. I have 11 respondents, 11 participants. For my qualitative data, I use this inclusion criteria. I gathered them simultaneously but separately. For my quantitative data, I use I follow the normal procedure, our ethical consideration, legalities, so on and so forth were actually followed. The same thing happened with our qualitative data collection. No, the participants were actually reminded that they have the freedom to withdraw from the study anytime that they want. So that this is very much voluntary. And they were assured that the data will never be presented that will be detrimental to them. On my data analysis procedure, this is what I did. Okay, now, I told you I tried to analyze separately, okay? But I analyzed them simultaneously. Okay, so on the quantitative side, online responses were collated and organized in a spreadsheets to be subjected to SPSS. Remember that I used the Google form. So from the Google form, I converted it into a spreadsheets so that it will be prepared for subject to SPSS. In the SPSS, I was able to determine descriptive statistics that will determine the mean and standard deviation of the respondents' robot photo on the research productivity outputs and the responses for variables for research productivity. Ito yung sagot ng aking question number 1. Okay? Ano yung kanilang self-assessment on the research productivity in the 4 indicators? On my question number 2, I do the multinomial logical regression analysis model was used to determine the predictors of research productivity. I want to determine which among those predictors could predict research productivity using multinomial logistic regression analysis. For my data analysis procedure in qualitative, I adopted Colysis 7 steps. So I will not elaborate. I use familiarization, and that is how it is done. Okay, the researcher familiarizes himself with the data, identification of sufficient statements. So the minutes of the interview here, my interview actually were the interviews were gathered again through using Zoom or Messenger, video messaging. And then there was a meaning formulation. Themes were identified, raised from the participant statements. So from the codes, I was able to formulate themes. Themes are similar, were clustered and grouped together. That's the 4th. The 5th, I write the description of the themes. So compose a summary of phenomena incorporating the identified themes during the clustering phase in step 4. Then generating the fundamental basis, which is the model. After the condensing the themes, which descriptions were written down, which chapter the structure of participants' research productivity. And lastly, shaping the verification of the model. This model was a temporary model based from the themes, from the questions, because the final model was actually the byproduct of my joint display analysis. So, how was the triangulation done? Okay? So, ito yung ginawa ko nung ako ay nag-triangulate ng aking quantity and quality data using joint display analysis. So, there are actually 4 phases in joint display analysis. On the first stage is called the listen stage. Here, the researcher generate raw data, okay, from quantity and quality, coded them, were listed in the matrix form for QLR and QNR data. Mamaya ipakita ko sa inyo kung paano ko siya ginawa. Then after that, so sa madaling salita, mayroon kang column. No? You try to put in one column your qualitative data and another column your quantitative data. Then the matching stage. Here, the researcher tries to compare information in opposite columns reflecting materials related to the original data, aligned, similar, specific horizontally, and refining and organizing the categories produced into columns. So you have your categories from your statistics, you have your themes from your codes. Then lists are ordered and contrasted using the common shows rows reflecting trends and similarities. Makikita mo siya, no? Actually, sa original, when I'm making my draft, joint display analysis, ang gulo niya kasi kailangan mong gumawa ng mga arrow para ipakita mo how they were actually derived. But in the final analysis, no, kailangan medyo malinis mo na siyang ipakita. And the third phase is the checking stage. Here, you try to cross-check all information completeness in 4 external columns to ensure alignment. So you have your statistics, then your categories, you have your themes for quali and your codes for quali. Then, the final model building stage. Dito ka nagagawa ng inyong model. In case, productivity or quality assurance model. So the offshoot of the study after necessary innovation in my case is Capulso's research productivity model, quality assurance model, which serves as the pillar of the study. Okay, remember, I'm trying to develop quality assurance framework on research productivity in basic education. Sa madaling salita, kapag ikaw ay principal at gusto mo magkaroon ng research productivity ang iyong school, you can use my model, okay, in order to ensure research productivity. The model, which is actually a byproduct of triangulation using joint display analysis. So the researcher compared and contrasted the listing, matching the calculating processes, and conceptualized the findings gained by relation and combination of the qualitative and quantitative columns. The researcher then tests concepts and potential cause for observed events, findings, or behaviors which interpret the model signal. Allow me to share. I hope I could go back there later on. Okay. Sir Moderator, is my screen visible?
Yes, sir. We can see it, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. So this is the draft. This is my draft joint display analysis. So I have here my statistics and my categories, my explanation here, and these are my key points. Okay, my codes and my themes. You try to identify which of these are connected to one another and try to organize an emerging theme to capture that idea. And then I have here my initial meta-analysis or meta-inference as I was showing earlier. But in my final stage, I actually deleted this and put the discussion at the bottom part. Okay? So for example, in here, I have here highest educational attainment as my category. For my qualitative themes, I have graduate studies, responsive research culture. Mukhang parehas na lumalabas na kapag may highest educational attainment, meaning kapag nag-graduate study ka, more or less, you will have more chances of producing research. That's why I initially write getting into graduate studies. Take note that these are my initial themes. And then I have here my second theme. Okay, my second emerging theme. Okay, lifelong education is a personal desire. Okay, so I have here my mean and my standard deviation on all major published works, projects being conducted, connected to lifelong education, research lead to success in career, professional development. So lahat ng red ay connected sa lifelong education. Lahat ng green ay connected sa personal desire. So that's how you put them together. And then you try to analyze in your own words and later on refine. Okay? Here, the same thing with research-focused leadership and integral support. So, mapapansin nyo, napakahalaga ng mga kulay because that would help us determine the possible complementarity of our codes and themes and categories. Okay? So, this is actually the draft. Now, I'll go back now to my presentation to finish my presentation. Okay. Am I still audible, Sir Moderator?
Yes, sir. We are still audible, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now, here. So, after that initial drafting of joint display analysis, you try to refine, you try to edit, particularly the language, so on and so forth, so that it will become presentable because you're supposed to publish that in an international journal. or share that in conference like this. So the triangulation process that I use led to my own model. Now, I'll be showing my model later on, which I call my model as Capulso's Research Productivity Model. Now, ano nang nangyari? So, now in my dissertation, it's actually belongs to table 13, joint display analysis on graduate studies as factor of research productivity. I just try to expand it para lang makita ninyo. So, I have here a mean, okay? 2.44 mean or less true of me. Ito yung naalala nyo, ito yung question number 1. On the teacher's confidence in the use of statistical research method. And ang kanyang 40% of teachers are not engaged in graduate studies, so on and so forth. 39% have ongoing master's degree, 14 are master's degree. Regression analysis, highest educational attainment. So lumalabas doon sa pag-aaral natin on the final analysis of regression analysis that indeed highest educational attainment is a predictor of research productivity. Ibig sabihin, mas malaking tsansa na magsusulat o makapagtapos ng research ang isang graduate student na teacher. That is why in the category, I said teachers have low self-confidence level in using various statistical tools in research. Lumabas yan dito. Dahil sa mababa namin, almost half of the teachers have not yet pursued graduate studies. Hence, many of them miss the opportunities to learn research methods by engaging in graduate studies. So pinapakita ko lang kung gaano kahalaga yung graduate studies. Further education is a predictor of research productivity. Ito yung lumabas sa ating regression analysis. Highest education has a negative lag odds, which means that as the highest education increases, then this increases the odds that they will belong to the higher productivity level. On the qualitative side, if you try to look at our code TB, teacher B, number 15, sabi niya, studying in graduate studies give the researcher an initial knowledge on data analysis, especially in statistics, which is actually bumangga siya doon sa ating theme, no, qualitative theme natin na higher academic endeavors to enhance research productivity. Ito kasi isa sa mga themes natin doon sa ating qualitative data. Ngayon, binangga ko itong ating quantitative and qualitative data dito sa emerging theme. Ang tawag natin sa theme na to ay getting into graduate studies. In simply put, that one of the possible indicator of research productivity is to get into graduate studies. Mamaya magre-recommend ako sa mga principal, paano ba ang kanyang mode of verification? Paano mo siya ma-verify? Okay? The next emerging theme na lumabas ay nurturing intrinsic passion for research. Yung intrinsic sa loob. In our quantity, it says 2.72 mean or more true of me on the teacher's resourcefulness in making adjustment in certain situations. True of me on teacher's capacity to focus research objectively and accomplishing the task. So teachers manifest resourcefulness by adjusting to different situations. So isa ito sa mga ugali ng mga teacher. Remember, in this part, we ask them to assess themselves. And they try to assess themselves having that motivation, that creativity, and capacity to focus. From the results, self-efficacy has negative lags, which means ito yung regression analysis natin. Ang kanyang lag doon sa regression analysis is negative, which means that as the self-efficiency, yung tiwala nila sa sarili, ay nag-i-increase, then this increases the odds that they will belong to the higher productivity level. Sa madaling salita, the higher the confidence of the teacher on themselves, the higher chances that they will produce research. And here, in our quali, it says here, the teacher love and the ardor for research help them solve different problems of society. The productivity in research starts from the love of research. So yung love of research na to at ang ardor is actually leading to our themes, which says self-initiative drives teachers to find solution by doing research, which brings a sense of fulfillment. Kapag binangga natin itong quantity and quality natin, ang nabuo kong emerging theme ay nurturing intrinsic passion for research. Sa madaling salita, kapag ang teacher ay gusto niya yung pagre-research. Kahit ano pa yung dami ng ginagawa niya, makakagawa siya ng paraan para makaproduce siya ng research. As long as the teacher has intrinsic passion, not because of promotion, not because of ranking, but because he loves to better his practice in the school. I think next, engaging in lifelong learning through research. Ito naman, ang tinutukoy lang natin dito ay yung patuloy na pag-i-engage ng mga teacher sa research. So as of now, if you've been following in different groups of research, there are actually new or not so new process, approaches, and methodology in conducting research. Like, because of the scarcity of face-to-face mechanism, researchers would normally adhere to collecting data through online mechanism. Kaya nga nagkaroon tayo in Quali, we have actually ethnography. Now, you could actually make use of the data coming from the internet, from the social media as your data to conduct research. That is where we have the ethnography, no? Ethnography in the internet. And how do you know that? By engaging in a lifelong learning. So it says here, okay, the teacher's familiarity on the content knowledge on one's research area, such as major published works, projects being conducted, so on and so forth. Teachers show a grasp on content knowledge related to research area of specialty. So doing research opens different opportunities for professional growth as researchers. So sa madaling salita lang, no, without reading everything, alam natin na kapag tayo ay patuloy na natututo, na nag-aaral, kaya nga tinatawag na lifelong learning in research, mas ma-encourage tayo mag-produce ng research. That brings me to my next emerging themes. And lastly, which is actually, I think, may na-skip pa ako na isa, pero hindi ko na siya ipapaliwanag lahat, which is very important, incentivizing research productivity. Isa tong lumabas kasi I have read almost 150 literature bago ko natapos yung aking dissertation on research productivity. In other universities, just like here, even in the Philippines, researchers who are able to publish in Scopus Journal were given an incentive of 90,000 to 100,000 pesos. Ako nakapag-publish na ako sa Scopus ng 2 yata or 3. Wala man kaming incentive, no, sa Department of Education. Pero sa higher education, mayroon. At lumalabas sa pag-aaral that incentivizing teachers would actually trigger productivity. And the provision of incentive ay hindi lang naman kailangang pera, no? Pwede namang load, pwedeng recognition, so on and so forth. Now, after I analyze my quantitative and qualitative research using my joint display analysis, nabuo ko yung aking framework. And look at that. Now, I am showing to you, presenting Capulso's research productivity model. Ito yung naging output ng aking dissertation, ng aking Doctor of Philosophy, although minor edits are still being undertaken para natin siya ma-refine talaga. So here at the middle, you have your main your main variable, which is research productivity. So what I'm saying is, for schools to have research productivity, they have to have nurture intrinsic passion for research. They have to encourage teachers, extend integral support from the school head, incentivize teachers' research productivity equitably, engage in lifelong learning through research, and getting into graduate studies. Sa madaling salita, itong framework na to, okay, ay magsasabi sa atin, if you are a school leader, if you are educational leader, that this model is actually supported by different literatures, that for us to have a good productivity in our institution, we have to embrace the 5 indicators in this model. And my recommendation to the basic education is the adoption of my model. But for the school heads and maybe for school heads and administrators, ito yung aking suggestion. May it be those who are listening now, who are taking charge of their teachers, if you want research productivity, under nurturing intrinsic passion for research, it means school heads or school leaders should nurture teachers' intrinsic passion by providing them avenues and opportunities to be engaged in research. Paano ngayon mame-measure ni principal or ni dean na productive ang teacher because of intrinsic passion for research? Through the number of action research proposal presented, number of approved action research, completed action research, amount generated from external research funding institutions like the UST, so on and so forth, no? Number of school-based training conducted. So ito yung mga dapat nakikita ni school head sa school kay teacher in this particular indicator. Under the second indicator, no, you could take a picture while I'm taking some water. Okay, don't worry, I'm almost done. So, encouraging teachers to pursue an advanced degree as an indicator of research productivity, the school head should inspire teachers to enroll graduate studies in schools with vital research training. That is why, you know, when I was in a private school, in a university, teachers were actually sent to graduate school for free, no, sagot ng university. May ano lang yun, may agreement na you have to serve the school for this much. Okay? The number of faculty research pursuing masters and PhDs, numbers of faculty members awarded with scholarship grant. Ito yung sinasabi ko. Then extending external support. Ano ba yung pwedeng gawin ni principal, ni dean, ni president? Principal should promote and intensify support to research by providing faculty members the time and resources they need to conduct action research. Number of action researches presented in division up to the international level. Okay, number of research or action research published, number of action researches conducted in collaboration with other schools, amount of fund allocated to conduct research. Lastly, ito na yung last slide, I suppose, no? Engaging in lifelong learning through research, this indicator refers to how the school head promotes teachers to be engaged in research. What the principal should do is will determine the number of faculty members who attend trainings, di ba? Lalong-lalo na during the pandemic. Number of faculty members who serve as research presenters and speakers, just like this one now. Number of action research results utilized and adapted by other schools for innovation. Number of action research-based instructional materials developed by teachers. A number of copyrighted instructional materials, which is a byproduct of research. And lastly, in incentivizing research productively, equitably, research incentives are necessary for research productivity. As school heads, leaders must be able to support teachers by designing policies for research incentives. Number of action research given an incentive in a form of honoraria, po pwede namang pera, extra teaching load. So halimbawa yung isang university, kapag may research ka, mayroon kang 3 loads na bayad ka pero hindi ka nagtuturo dyan kasi nagre-research ka. Number of faculty members with awards from researches conducted. So that is how the paper ended. So you started with your problem, identifying your problem, determining what method are you supposed to use, then analyzing both quanti and quali. In my case, I use concurrent triangulation, I use joint display analysis, then I crafted the model, and this is my contribution to the body of knowledge, no, particularly on research productivity. So for basic education teachers, there's a need for them to sustain stronger professional development, focusing on research writing. So with that, thank you very much for listening. So thank you very much for inviting me here. And because of that, that dissertation actually led me to publishing my own International Journal of Advanced Multidisciplinary Studies, which is now indexed in the National Library of the Philippines to enhance research. No, that's why we help teachers actually from different parts of the world to publish their research in this international journal that we have. If you have some questions after this, you may just contact us with that email address and cell phone number. So once again, thank you very much for listening, and I now open for some clarification and sharing. Thank
Again,
you.
there you have it, everyone. A round of applause to Dr. Leonilo B. Capulso on this discussion about using joint display analysis in mixed method research or MMR. I like the idea of how Sir Capulso was able to provide us an example, especially with his dissertation, making the discussion more easy to absorb. I am personally interested, sir, to read especially the transcription part and and generally the whole dissertation you have. I am looking forward to have a copy of that, sir. Okay. Anyway, again, we will proceed now to the open forum session or open forum part. Our session for this afternoon is only allocated for 2 hours. We will cater to as many questions as possible, depending on the availability of our time. We will select questions raised by our participants here in Zoom and in YouTube. And to those who will be tapped to ask questions, I would like you to introduce yourself first, the institution where you are affiliated with, and your question. Again, you may raise or you may press the raise hand button if you would like to personally ask Sir Capulso. And we also encourage everyone, to those who would like to remain anonymous, for example, to have their questions be written in slido.com. Just use the code 112251, or you may use the code or the link provided to you or appearing in the screen. Okay, so sir, we are receiving lots of positive feedbacks, especially with your discussion. And we actually have those who are already looking forward to have a copy of your discussion. Again, to all of our participants here, we will be giving to you a PDF copy of Dr. Capulso's presentation together with your certificate. And we also have those who are asking about the link. We will give it to you after this. And there was actually a link or evaluation form forwarded to you ahead together with your Zoom link. Okay? So do we already have questions appearing in slido.com? Sir Jean? Okay. We actually have questions already appearing here in Zoom. I think it was a question coming from Mr. Liagas. Okay, let me see it again. I thought that it will appear in Slido. Okay, sir, we have it here. How is mixed method differ with triangulation? I think it will also be similar also, or it would be ideal also, sir, for you to answer this question. We have justification on the use of mixed method research. Like, how do we normally like justify why using mixed method when you can use quantitative or qualitative? It's like an introductory question to those who are not yet familiar with mixed method.
Okay. Thank you very much for that clarification. Actually, I jokingly said that those who are using mixed method ay yung mga taong galit sa research. Why? Because basically you are doing three kinds of research at one time. You have to do quantitative, qualitative, and mixed method study. But when do you need to conduct a mixed method study? As mentioned earlier, we try to use quantitative mixed method study when our quantitative method is not enough to justify our assumptions, our queries. Like for example, if gamitin ko na lang yung aking dissertation. My dissertation is research productivity in basic education, basically in region 3. Kung gumamit lang ako ng quantitative research, pwede kasing lumabas doon na mahina yung mga teacher sa leadership. Ibig sabihin, there are a lot of teachers who want to conduct research, but the principal, the school heads are not very supportive. That explains everything. And that's the end of the story. What will happen next? Since my intention is to create a quality assurance framework, which is actually now leading to the answer, my objective is to create a framework that would serve as a quality assurance framework in research productivity. I have to identify indicators to do that. And as identified, okay, the indicators were actually mentioned using my own framework. And using quantitative method alone will not suffice. On the other hand, if I will use only qualitative method, I will only be hearing the experiences of the experts researchers, because my participants actually were productive researchers. If you try to go back to my selection criteria, sino ba yung pwedeng sumama sa aking qualitative data gathering? Those people who'd been presenting research, those people who'd been conducting research already. So I will not have the other picture of the story of why there are people who are not conducting research. And going back to the main problem, what made me decide to conduct this study is that during that time when I was conducting my paper, or prior to my conduct of my paper, with all modesty, I was actually presenting my action research, and the paper was actually awarded as the best paper during the Congress. Unfortunately, during that time, a superintendent asked a question that how many research were produced this year? And the answer was less than 100, and there are more than if I'm not mistaken, more than 10,000 teachers in the area. So there was actually scarcity of research productivity. Now, I want to know the reason why there is a scarcity of research productivity despite all the efforts of the region. So what I did,
Sir,
I
pwede
asked,
ma-mute lang na eh.
okay, I asked the teachers, okay, there are actually 479, para malaman ko kung ano yung mga dahilan bakit hindi sila nagpo-produce ng research. Gumamit naman ako ng quali para ipakita ko what were with the productive researchers that made them produce research, and then I put them together so that, as mentioned earlier, we are using qualitative or mixed method in order to have a bigger, a holistic picture of a particular phenomenon. So I think that explains it. No, it depends on which area, it depends on the title and the main objective of the study that would determine which research methodology is actually fitting to your study.
Okay, thank you, Sir Doy. We have here a question from Sir Neil Ryan Ado from SMC Tagum. Sir, it can be noticed in the example given earlier that the first two research questions are for the quantitative phase of the study, and the last question is for the qualitative phase. Is there no question for the mixed method integration? What do you think of that, sir?
Okay, the main purpose of doing a mixed method study is an integration of the results. And sometimes the integration of the results is actually implied by combining, by answering your quantitative and qualitative study. Sometimes, instead of having a mixed method question, what actually other researchers did is actually more of a framework, okay? Like for example, based on the questions earlier raised, what framework can be drawn as response to the kind of phenomenon that would like to be raised. For example, in my case, tama po kayo, the first two questions were actually asking the quantitative questions to gather quantitative data. The third question is on the qualitative data, and remembering that my overarching objective, which is actually implied in the statement of the problem, is to have a quality assurance framework as a byproduct of answering the quantitative and the qualitative study or the qualitative question.
Okay, thank you, sir. Again, we are encouraging our participants, especially those who would like to have their questions be prioritized, to press the raise hand button. We have here a question from Sir Teofilo Damuco of UCC Ilocos Region. Sir, it is an enriching presentation, sir. I just would like to be clarified on your predictors of research productivity. You were able to present the different indicators of research productivity, but what about for the predictors?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. If I'm allowed to share screen,
Okay, sir.
just to satisfy the query, because I did not share that part. Okay. Am I allowed to share screen, sir?
Yes, sir.
Let me check. Because that's basically was my my dissertation. Anyway, it will take time. My apologies. Anyway, I might not share it anymore. But let me check here. Is it here? No, no. As to my productivity, what came out was leadership actually came out to be an indicator of a predictor of research productivity, and higher educational attainment were also a predictor of research productivity based on the regression analysis. The other indicators were actually having some were getting a score, but not enough for to become predictors of research productivity using logistic analysis. So among the four, I think there were only two indicators which were considered as predictors of research productivity, whereas our quality assurance framework, which is now my own predictors or my own indicators of research productivity, is a byproduct of that result of the first and second questions and the third question, which is a quali. Sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. Actually, Sir Ryan or Neil Ryan Ado came up with another question here. According to him, like in a sequential design, is it possible for a concurrent triangulation design that the participants in the qualitative phase will be coming from the quantitative phase? What do you think of that, Doc?
I think it depends on the kind of data that being gathered, and also the kind of questions and research questions that is being asked. In my case, for example, since I would like to get a holistic perspective, random perspective of teachers' assessment on research productivity based on the indicators. By the way, the first four indicators were literature indicators coming from the international study that leadership, individual, and institutional characteristic. Actually, the fourth indicator, which is self-efficacy, was based from a study conducted by Sulabo from UP Los Baños. So, yung apat na indicator na ginamit ko to assess research productivity, just would like to know how which of those indicators were actually depriving or helping teachers in general to become productive. Whereas the last question, because I would like to assure that I maybe because of that initial bias in my mind, that is the background of the study, why there is the scarcity of research productivity when there are also number of productive researchers. That is why I in this case I choose those only who are productive and productive researchers. As to the question of sir, can he use the same participants? For example, the respondents from the quanti can be used as participants in the quali. I cannot categorically say yes or no, because again, it will be reliant and dependent on the kind of data that will be gathered or the kind of questions that will be answered.
Okay, again, thank you, Sir Doy. Let us have here another question appearing in slido.com. We have a question from Sir Alvin Fulgencio of Southern Baptist College. According to her, sir, is MMR more costly compared to qualitative and quantitative research? What do you
Yes,
think of that, sir?
yes. Opo, sir. As mentioned earlier, ang ibang mga kasama mo nagde-defense na Ikaw nandun ka pa lang sa data gathering. Bakit? Sabi ko, because literally you are conducting 3 research. Others could just proceed already by their focus group discussion or their interview, whereas ikaw, that's still your first part. You still have to gather your data for quantitative data, and then after that you have to integrate using whichever integration you want to use, like this joint display analysis. So sir, totoo pong magasto talaga yung mixed method. Pero ang kagandahan naman, kung babalikan natin, what is good about mixed method? Mixed method will give you a bigger picture. For example, on a political side, marami tayong galit sa particular na mga politician. At what is the lens we are using? We are using the lens of what we know about the person. At we base it from what we hear from other people. Ang tanong, did you make it a point to approach that person, sit down with that person, and really know why the person is like that? Just like our students, no? May mga students tayo, for example, now during pandemic, na hindi sila nag-i-engage. Kapag nag-base lang tayo sa score nila sa quiz, hindi sila nagpapasa ng module, automatically ibabagsak na natin. Pero sabi nga ni DepEd, at least you have to make intervention. And by intervention, you mean you reach out to the person. Kung hindi face-to-face, at least you talk to the parents, to the kid. Alamin mo kung anong nangyari. Yun pala, kaya siya hindi nag-engage kasi nagka-dengue siya, pagkatapos niyang madengue, nagka-COVID pa siya, pagkatapos niyang na-COVID, namatayan pa siya ng magulang. Okay. Kaya pala, kuna siya. So, ganun yung perspective ng mixed method research. Mixed method research will give you a bigger, a clearer, and a complete picture of a particular scenario, of a phenomenon. And in making decisions later on, as we always remember, we do research in order to solve a problem. And if you have all the data in front of you, the positive and the negative side, you will have an informed decision later on, compared only to quantitative and qualitative research. Kaya nga, di ba, sabi natin, yung iba na hindi na kontento doon sa kanilang qualitative master's thesis, ang ginawa nila, nag-ano pa sila, pag nag-factor analysis pa sila, gumawa pa sila ng instrument based from their thesis because they want this time to see the bigger picture. Kaya sir, totoo po talaga. Sobrang mahal, mahabang panahon, pero fulfilling naman yung result.
Okay. Again, I hope that it will not discourage Sir Alvin Fulgencio to engage into mixed method research.
Pero sir,
I personally
fulfilling.
Yes, sir. Yes, it's good. It's true. I mean, I personally look up to those who are into mixed method research because I believe that they are exemplifying mastery of both qualitative and quantitative. Okay, now we have it here, another anonymous question. Sir, napapasarap tayo dito sa napakaraming tanong.
Opo.
We are only expected or we are supposed to end 3:30 today, but I hope it's okay with you, sir, to extend a little to cater to the other questions appearing here. So we have it here. Can we use other chart other than box plot in presenting, quali findings? What do you think of that, Sir Doy?
Okay. As I mentioned to you, there is very scarce literature on presenting joint display analysis. And if you try to go to the founders, the proponents of joint display analysis, they are actually encouraging researchers to be very creative in presenting their data such that they will be able to present the readers a better understanding. Kung mapapansin natin, yung mga nakikita pa lang natin na example, for example, yung box plot plus the interview, yung picture at ang narrative. In my case, I just use statistics and my themes. There could be other ways of presenting data. As for example, there is a method called photo voice in qualitative study, wherein researchers would use pictures to express their own phenomenon, their own experience, and later on there will be discussions to be made. So pictures could also be laden with narratives as to the explanation of the particular phenomena or data being gathered. And the answer is yes. the researcher could be very creative. Take note that that's the good with this new method of presenting and integrating data, because the main author actually is encouraging new researchers to be creative. Sir.
Okay, thank you, Sir Doy. I think we will have the three other remaining questions appearing here in Slido, and the two questions appearing in the chat function of Zoom as the last questions for this session. Let
Okay,
us have
sir.
it here, an anonymous participant questioning in the concurrent mix method, qual equals quan, are the are the respondents the same or separate sets?
Okay.
What do you
I
think of that, sir?
I think the question is similar to the earlier raised. How can a researcher use the same respondents for quantitative and qualitative data to be gathered? I cannot say categorically say yes or no. For me personally, it depends on the kind of data you are gathering. If you want, for example, to gather data on a general understanding of a phenomenon, then you can do at random. Okay, you can use at random your participants, and then later on, as you try to gather your qualitative data, as long as that participant that you got from a random sampling is qualified based on your selection criteria, I think that will not hinder your participants to join your qualitative participants. But again, it will depend on the objective of the study and the questions that you would like to answer. If do you think the respondents could be beneficial or would be detrimental to your results?
Okay, thank you, Sir Doy. We have one in the presentation of findings for concurrent triangulation. Sorry. Sir. Well, we have an anonymous question again. In the presentation of findings for concurrent triangulation, do we present the findings integratively or separately? Thank you
Okay.
so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. As mentioned, I did three analyses. First is if you try to go back to my explanation when I do concurrent triangulation, before I proceeded to joint display analysis, I made a separate analysis for quantitative data. I made another analysis for qualitative data. That is why I said from my transcripts I was able to 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 develop codes and key points coding or key points, and then later on themes and categories. That's my second analysis. And then the third analysis is I tried to integrate the categories, quantitative categories and qualitative themes to get another analysis. And then later on, instead of doing meta inferences, I do the discussion at the bottom of the table in my actual dissertation. So you first do individual analysis of the findings, and then later on you make an integrate or a holistic presentation of findings. In my case, the integrated findings is my emerging themes, which with later on I collated that will become Capulso's quality assurance framework for research.
Okay, thank you, sir. Actually, your answer, sir, is also answering the question of Sir Romeo Leones here in Zoom. His
Okay.
question was, are there other data analysis techniques aside from joint display analysis? So again, Sir Romeo, your question was answered by Sir Capulso a while ago. I think we will have a question here from UCC Ilocos Region, Mr. Teofilo Damoco. His question was, sir, I would like to take this chance to thank you for expounding my grasp of the mixed method research. Okay, sorry, ano aton niya. Okay, or the question, can no longer see the question here. Okay, for expounding my grasp of the mixed method. But pardon me, sir, for the following questions I would like to raise. He is raising two questions here. One, In the sequential explanatory design, do we need to make a separate thematic analysis for the qualitative data or simply integrate the qualitative analysis to the quantitative analysis? And in the concurrent mix method or the I guess this question was answered by Sir Capulso a while ago, especially the second question. Sir, would you like to add something?
Uh just would like to again, no, that's a bit that question was a little bit addressed. But again, since I mentioned earlier that before you can make an 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 integration, okay, an integration analysis, or shall we say the mixed method analysis, you have already conducted an initial analysis, because what you will try to contrast or to compare is actually your analysis from your quantitative and qualitative results. Kaya nga sabi ko kanina, doing a mixed method research, basically you are doing three research altogether. You gather data for your quanti, you analyze, you gather data for your quali, you analyze, and then you compare your two analysis for you to get that that holistic analysis of your study. And then joint display analysis is just our way of presenting that kind of analysis.
Okay, thank you, sir. We have here a question from Sir Alvin Fulgencio, but it is quite unclear to me, especially with how he stated his question here. I think it would be ideal for us to have Sir Alvin to provide us a little context with the question he has provided here. But we have it here. I guess the last question from Mr. Anonymous, or an anonymous participant, I mean. In JDA, what if the results from both qualitative and quantitative do not meet in the middle? What will be the direction of interpretation?
Okay. That question answers what we call the fit, no? I said when the results of the quantitative and the qualitative study does not coincide, does not complement with one another, and there is a discordance, we call that discordance fit. It actually requires the researcher to as mentioned, as illustrated, to challenge some framework, or also to get additional data in order to prove that to justify and contextualize your result. But it doesn't mean that your study is not useful, because at some point that's exactly the reason why you are comparing, no, because you want to know if the set of data from quantitative is also the same data that you will gather from your qualitative. All you have to do is to report. But then if you want to proceed with your paper, you still have maybe according to Fitters and Criswell, you need to do additional study. You need to gather more data in order to contextualize your results. Sinasabi kasi baka kulang lang ang iyong data para hindi mo masagot ng tama. Another one na po pwedeng mong gagawin, remember they said that doing joint display analysis is an iterative process. Balikan mo nga yung balikan mo yung iyong data. Baka kasi nagkamali ka lang doon sa iyong sa iyong coding, sa iyong thematic analysis. But then again, that part of your process should still be reported until you decide that at a certain point hindi talaga sila magmi-meet, so the research therefore render a negative results, 'di ba? Pag kapag gumawa tayo ng action research or applied research, particularly if we do have hypothesis, tinitingnan natin if our intervention is effective or not. It's just like that, no? If it is effective, we say it is effective by looking at the significant relationship or the significant difference. Otherwise, we still report. If there is no significant difference before and after, but it doesn't mean na walang silbi yung ginawa mo. Nagkataon lang na hindi talaga yung iyong result is not enough to have a significant result. Kaya nga 'di ba yung action research naman at saka applied research ay cyclical. Ang gagawin mo niyan ay papalitan mo ng intervention para makita mo ulit kung ito naman ay effective o hindi. Pero gagawan mo pa din ng buong report yung una mong ginawang intervention. That's what we're saying, sir.
Again, a virtual round of applause to Dr. Leonilo B. Capulso. That ends our question and answer portion. We will try to reply to some of your queries raised after the end of this session. I guess a while ago, Dr. Capulso was able to provide us his own background, his contact number, or email on how to personally ask questions, especially questions that we failed to cater here in Zoom and also in YouTube. Let us proceed now to the giving of certificate. PISI 21, or the Philippine Institute of 21st Century Educators Incorporated, Zaraga, Iloilo, Philippines awards the Certificate of Recognition to Dr. Leonilo B. Capulso for imparting his invaluable time, resources, and expertise as resource speaker on the topic using joint display analysis in mixed method research, or MMR, during the conduct of National Virtual Conference for Research with the theme Retooling Research Skills for Professional Credibility and Integrity in the Academe, accorded the 16th day of July 2021 via Zoom video conferencing, live streamed on POMMI YouTube channel and PISI 21 Facebook page. Signed, Ricky A. Kibinko, MAT, MLPT, Virtual Conference Director. Signed, Emi John P. Indonila Palmani, MEd, LPT, National President, PISI 21. Again, congratulations to Dr. Leonilo B. Capulso for making this, the first part of our virtual conference, a successful one. Sir, we are looking forward to seeing you again, hopefully face-to-face na. Again, madamo gid nga salamat to Doc Capulso. Okay? Before we finally close our afternoon session for our day one of the conference, let me inform you that for you to get the certificate of participation for our morning and afternoon session, you are expected first to submit the evaluation form. A separate certificate and evaluation form will be forwarded to you tomorrow. May I request everyone now to kindly open your camera for a quick photo op with our speaker. Okay, technical team, I would like you now to facilitate.
Sir, I am basically from Rojas City.
Okay, Sir Capulso, I guess is fluent also in Hiligaynon.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, madamo gid nga salamat, Sir Doc. Sir Doy.
Thank you. Halong salamat.
Halong kita tanan. Okay. Now, can we have our technical team to facilitate our photo op?
Okay, good afternoon. So we have 8 panels. So panel 1, ready 1, 2, 3, smile, window, principle. Okay, panel 2. Panel 3. Smile lang ng smile. Hindi nyo alam kung saan yung panel. Okay, panel 3. Panel 4. Don't stop smiling. Okay, panel 5. 6. 7. And last panel. Okay, so thank you guys.
Okay, again, thank you. Stay safe, everyone. See you 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. God bless and congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you po.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you po.
Welcome. Maraming salamat din
Thank you
po.
very much po.
So much.
Thank you so much po. Thank you.
Thank you
so
also.
much.
God bless.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
So much po. Thank
you po.
Thank you. Thank you.